What's up, guys? So, if you were paying attention at all to anything, you would already know that this weekend we hosted the first Quenton Cup, a great, fun tournament. And I know I was trying to hype this up over the past couple, weeks, whatever, and maybe you guys had no idea this was even going on, but I think you'll get the idea after we talk about some of the awesome decks that were able to do well at this tournament. Basically, it was like a low tier rogue tournament, still using the Edison ban list. And I kind of figured everyone has like a pet deck, that they maybe don't want to bring to a big tournament because they know it's like just barely not good enough, but they really like playing, they tested it out, whatever. So I certainly have dozens of these decks that whether failed experiments or just kind of fun in their on a more casual setting. But I figured it could be cool to have an environment where people could play those specifically and not feel like they're, just going to get blown out by more standard lists. And luckily, I think people got the idea because the results were honestly awesome. Like, I think it was 25 players and we saw a ton of really interesting gameplay. We saw like Apprentice, Junk, Monarch deck, Fusion decks, multiple of them, multiple ritual decks, Cloudians, all this kind of like tier 2 janky stuff, as well as even more like crazy mishmash decks. So it really makes you appreciate like how good these decks can be in a more like closed environment. So I want to showcase the top 4 decks as well as a few other of my favorites that did well at this tournament. So to start things off, we have this crazy list, which is like a bounce deck, I guess. Just focused on like this card, Degenerating Circuit, which when a card is returned to the hand, it gets banished instead. So he has all these weird little bounce monsters, Penguin Soldier, a little penguin package here. And the goal is just like bounce stuff to their hand. If you don't have this up, I guess you can banish stuff with De-Designator. Maybe you could see a Mind Crush on the sided maybe, but yeah, just a really kind of silly deck. I guess he's trying to keep his life points high because this makes you pay every standby, but Solemn Wishes can, balance that out. But, kooky deck, you gotta love to see it. So this is one that didn't do so well. And I believe this is one that got 6th from Spiral, like 5th, 6th. I thought this deck was really awesome too. I mean, it's playing freaking Red Eyes, the OG Red Eyes, so you can't really be too upset at that. But it's got a lot of cool synergies. I mean, this Prisma Toolbox deck, which a couple players were playing in this tournament, and really lends itself, I think, well to these kind of strategies. But as you can see, he can send the Red Eyes and get it back with the swing. He can send the Ragnarok, get it back with the swing. Those could get used for the Red Eyes. Or what he really wants to do is make King Dragoon, this guy down here, is untargetable. Just a cool boss monster that protects all your dragons as well. So you can summon that, special the Red Eyes, special the OG Red Eyes, and just kind of control the game that way. If all else fails, you've got the Miracle Fusion packages. And this kind of trap lineup, Decree, protects, all the Mirror Force Torrential that get through the Dragoon. This deck was just a blast to see in action. He was popping off, doing the big King Dragoon plays, making absolute zero, pushing with both. And even maybe the coolest part of this deck to me is the one-sided Dark Blade. Crazy little card, 1800 vanilla, but what he uses it for is dumping for Dark Blade the Dragon Knight. Goat format players might be familiar. It's like a Kaiku, it banishes 3 from the grave. So you can use this, and I assume you side this in against maybe frogs or other kind of graveyard reliant matchups. I don't know what you're expecting in the Quentin Cup, but yeah, just a really sweet deck that just barely missed I was just going to feature top 4, but I guess technically this is top 6. But on to the top 4, the bracket, as you can see here, we had Spiral lose to Marcus and Gote, and then I guess Spiral's in top 8 then. My bad. But yeah, Marcus, Gote, and Jay Feardis were top 3, and Kit was the one who actually took it home, went going undefeated the whole day. But so let's start with our top four, Marcus and Goat. This is Goate's deck. Friend of mine, I'm glad that he has returned to play a little Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I know he's been out of it for a while. It was great to see a bunch of friends of mine just participate in this and having a good time. But I love his decks. They're very streamlined and built, with a lot of thought and ratios in mind. But this is around this guy Garlandorf. Now, if you don't know what he does, he can, pop all the cards in the field, I think, with a defense less than his attack, and his attack's like 2,500. So basically, you're popping everything on the field except himself, and can push for a bunch of damage, because then you can follow up with, another summon, or, just pop all the field that way and then control with traps. The coolest interaction is you advance Ritual Art, dump the E-Hero Neos, this guy, and then you Hero Blast him back. And then the side is just a bunch of good floodgates and other removal traps that you can just use to control the game. So it's based around this guy as kind of your field clear, comeback card, bomb, and then just good traps to back it up. So this was also just great to see in action. Garlandorf, wonky card. I think everyone had to read it. No one really even knew what it did. But very cool deck from Gote. Next up we have Marcus, who was just on the channel with his Machina hero deck. This is another plasma deck. The guy likes what he likes. But this is very cool as well. It's got Dogma and Plasma for Destiny End Dragoon, which is just a monster of a card if you ever get it out. It's pops a card on the field, deals damage, and then it comes back into standby if you banish another D hero. So really, really strong, really hard to deal with. But the main deck is really cool too. He's got this snowman package just to create some defense and remove problem cards. He's got this Cyber Dragon and King of the Swamp. Those can search Poly and be fusion subs for any of these here. And the coolest part is probably honestly the Last Warrior, and we saw him dropping this a number of times throughout the tournament. I think he caught some guy who had used double Drill Warrior, and then he summoned Last Warrior and prevented both of them from coming back. That was insane. But also I like about this, a lot of these Destiny End Dragoon decks really focus on trade-in, which can just be kind of bricky. But this is just kind of all gas, no breaks, very current player mindset. Fusion recovery, Book of Moon, Snowman Eater, kind of removal, non-engine, decree, stun out all the back row, and then post board, you have Consecrated to stall. You have a bigger Last Warrior package against, I guess, really decks that it might hurt, and MST for Floodgates, triple deck dev, which is great with the Destiny End Dragoon, both to protect it and, obviously nuke all their lower than 15s, but just a really cool deck, really fast deck. We saw him OTK a bunch of people, sometimes with super poly post board, but really, really cool stuff, and can make fusions pretty consistently, which was, seen throughout the day. A lot of people using fusion-based decks. So, second place, we have Jay Feartis, local New York friend of mine, and he was using this Chaos Endmaster deck. Now, I know he's been testing this deck a lot, just on and off, and maybe brought it to some real tournament. So it's definitely like a pretty viable deck in a real sense, and pretty close to being good, I think, because as you can see, he's using a lot of the normal fairy core, triple Shining Angel, Honest, Nova Summoner, Alchemist, but that's really just to search the Chaos End because it can come off the Angel. But then he's also playing the one Christia, just you might as well if you're playing all these fairies. And a bunch of good stable dark monsters as well. He's got the 3 bosses, Christia, Dad, Sork. So you need to have all these darks to support it, but Sphere of Chaos can search the Chaos Endmaster, search a couple of these other goodies, Gale, Sangan. But yeah, really cool deck, just provides some defense. Spy, I feel like, is pretty strong in this kind of like toned down power level meta. And yeah, a lot of good traps. So it's kind of just a good stuff deck, which you might think would dominate this type of format, and he did do really well. I mean, I think his only losses over the course of the day came to Kit, who I suppose we should go around to, but this deck is very cool. Chaos Endmaster pops out Sphere of Chaos anytime it kills something, kind of like a Flame Veiled Fire Dog, and then you can make an 8, you can make Dark End really easily, just set up with traps, and then drop your big boss monsters. And it was pretty impressive to see this deck pop off sometimes. But I gotta say, the real star of the show, Kit, just crushed it with this crazy Dark Gaia deck. And I gotta say, like, really no bullshit. I think you guys can tell. I would tell you if I was just hyping something up just to hype it up, but I really do think this is a pretty interesting Dark Gaia list, and I think it could perform very well at any tournament that you bring it to. I really think it could have a lot of potential to do well in the main format, maybe with some adjustments, but even so, so you got to look at what we have here, and basically it's I would say like Dark Gaia Monarchs kind of reminds me of a classic 2008 Monarch deck randomly, because you got this Reckless Greed, Mask of Darkness engine that can provide you a lot of speed, but then you also kind of have this stability, like comeback plays with like Soul Exchange into Caius, all that stuff, and Dark Calling, of course. This is all fueling Dark Calling. I mean, there's actually nothing here that isn't a Rock or a Fiend, so definitely staying on theme. But then you also have a lot of good turn one or kind of like mid-ground plays, these Jujitsus, the 3 Guardians, and the 2 Doom Calibers. So I think you're able to actually kind of play a well-paced game plan where you can kind of like force out back row with these guys, and then do finishers with the Dark Calling, or just make different kinds of layered pushes. I love the trap lineup, also with the cheeky magic cylinder just to push for some extra damage. And really cool deck. And I can also see why it would do really well in this kind of meta, because as you can see from the list we just saw, like a lot of these people are kind of playing more combo oriented decks. That's kind of the thing. Like you kind of have these kooky combo decks that you want to break out. But I think that like these Guardian cards, Guardian and Doom Cal, do a good job at shutting that down. And just some of them aren't prepared for big Dark Gaia to drop on them. I mean, even like the King Dragoon deck, like you're thinking they might have no outs, but they're just going to drop a big Dark Gaia on you, or Jiu-Jitsu Master, or Mole, or anything. So I think he was pretty well prepared. Just seems really like finely tuned in a weird way compared to, what you might expect from this type of tournament. So really big fan of this deck, and congrats to Kit for doing well. There's maybe one other deck that I thought was kind of cool. I wanted to show you guys. Actually, two more. I really liked Ice Queen's deck. I thought her deck was very cool. This was a 44 card, like a very different take on this kind of a King Dragoon deck. Still King Dragoon, so kind of crazy. You get 2 sides of King Dragoon in one tournament. This is almost like a Dragon Turbo, but kind of like Mystic Tomato, and getting out your Dark Hex, getting out your Night End Sorcerer, Lord of D, obviously. Love playing Lord of D. So no Prisma engine here, but just a bunch of draw spells and turboing into those kind of combos. So that is also a very cool deck. Shout out to her. Really neat. And the last deck I wanted to show, actually this guy I think overslept or something and wasn't able to play, but I'm a huge fan of this deck that got submitted. Funny thing to do. I mean, if you're not so familiar, this is basically like nearly card for card a GOAT format Arrow Warrior deck. He swapped out a couple of the banned cards for a few other legal cards here, but I think these are maybe all cards that are GOAT legal technically. So this is a very funny thing to submit, and sad we couldn't get to see it in action, because who knows, maybe this could have actually taken some games off people, but I really like the concept, so shout out to you, GZ. But that was the tournament, and I really was happy about the results, and I think the Prisma stuff especially proving to be so popular, and the fact that I've been experimenting with the Prisma in the like Norlaris decks over the past couple weeks. I think Prisma is actually something that could really be explored a lot more in the main format, and who knows, maybe some of these ideas will proliferate over. I really do think that Dark Gaia deck could do a number, and maybe I'll get some gameplay up with that soon. And the VODs are still up from the tournament, so go check some of those out. Really a bunch of like wacky hijinks, crazy interactions. But yeah, like shout out to everyone who participated. Thank you a lot, and until the next one.